trust that what you believe in and what you value is worthy. And so it will come to fruition and will be successful for you, however you see success to be.
To have a community of women to work with, I think is something that I deeply value. That is something quite exceptional and something that has definitely grown my heart, restored a lot of faith that we can build wholesome communities.
Having amazing people that can ride out the highs and the lows in a non-judgmental way is so powerful. Hello, and welcome to this very special episode of All That We Are. I wanted to share a little bit about what happens behind the scenes and the remarkable women who work on this show. The sound is edited by Mary Chan, who's been part of this journey since episode 29, which was now some years ago. And the show notes are written by Annegret Affolderbach, who's been with the show since episode 91, also does the creative direction of the Instagram and the images that go alongside the episodes. For me, when I was putting the team together and the show was evolving, it became really clear to me that it was a really powerful thing to have an all-female team, people that identify as women and come from diverse cultural backgrounds. For me, this was important because so much media is made by similar kinds of people. So the editing, the hosting, the choosing, the way it's all presented has a very particular kind of lens. And I wanted to make something that was different. I wanted to make something that was an antidote to a lot of the other expressions of human culture that you can find out there. And that's really where All That We Are came from. Yeah, it's really come together through this amazing collective. We now have had, almost 200 guests that have come through the podcast. And before that, there were 200 contributors that were part of our book. So this has been a highly, deeply collaborative project since I began in 2010. The podcast is such an important part of this work. And for me, it's also such a precious part of our lives, everyone on the team. And so I share all this because we've been on a journey, and it's a journey that's constantly evolving. A huge amount of love and care and creativity and time goes into every single episode. As it is, the team that we have now, Mary and Annegret, they contribute to this and they take a much lower fee than they do for other work. This is because we all believe in the power of what's shared here and the stories, and we know that it really does change our lives, as well as so many of you that listen. We have a dream to make this a much more reciprocal ecosystem and to really increase the membership and the ways in which we're able to interact with each other. You as our listeners and communities, our guests and everything that they bring to it, and us as a team. We work remotely between Britain, South Africa and Canada, with the episodes flowing from one country to another, back and forth, until we are ready to publish and share with you. We have never actually all met. Annegret and I know each other from our time in London collaborating together in the sustainable fashion movement, but have not seen each other for years, since quite a while before Annegret became part of the All That We Are team. And Mary has not met either of us yet. And so it is a dream of ours that as the show gains more support and momentum through the community and the membership, that we will be able to plan a trip to meet up somewhere and co-create in the flesh. It is incredible what we're able to do and how deep we are able to connect without that time physically together in the same time and place. One of the things that I love about having a global remote team is that it means that we bring in all of these different perspectives into each episode. During this conversation, you really get to hear more about what goes into everything behind this show. And so you hear from me, of course, your host, and you hear from Annegret Affolderbach, who is an East German-born artist and cultural futurist. And she was in one of the very early episodes of the podcast as the guest. She has wide-reaching vision for planet and people. Her work awakens us to the unexpected, rooted in ecologies, cultures, and lifestyles. She weaves together sensory artworks, experiences, and creative strategies in response to landscapes and cultural elements found within. Her works are powerful activations that raise awareness about the interconnectedness of people and our ecologies, reminding us of our kinship with the living world. Her background is in sustainable fashion, which is how I met her, and experience as an editor and curator, and this has equipped her with unique insights and perspectives, making her a valuable voice in the fields of art, fashion, culture, and sustainability. She is co-creator for Water for Life, the Water podcast, co-curator of the Big Do Design Hackathon for Textiles and Fashion 2030 Sweden, and writer here at All That We Are. And we have Mary Chan, who is our sound editor. She is born and raised in Vancouver, BC, Canada, to immigrant parents. And Mary was told to stay quiet, even when she was laughing, and not ruffle any feathers. She wasn't allowed to have a voice and crave for someone to speak to. Today, Mary gives women self-confidence with their voice because she felt that she didn't have one growing up. She's a podcast strategist, voice coach, and voiceover artist who believes in empowering women to reclaim their voice. After working in radio for 20 years, she struck out on her own and founded Organized Sound Productions, a podcast production and consulting company. She collaborates with women entrepreneurs and women-led organizations who want to invest in creating a professional-sounding podcast to grow their brand while eliminating the overwhelm that comes with producing their own show. She offers podcast consulting, editing, voice coaching, and serving as her client's voice as a voiceover artist. But it's when she gets to show women how to use their voice and build awareness, credibility, and influence that's the best part of what she does. It's how they build authority in their industry, and Mary gets to keep working to empower more women to tell their stories through the power of their natural voice. When Mary's not at her sit-stand desk doing the podcasting thing, she's either knitting, sewing, or creating a great meal, usually Chinese or Asian food, from scratch. But she's not a hermit and loves to go outside on her adult trike, exploring the great outdoors of Victoria, BC. In this episode called Courageous Visions, we explore the themes of creative entrepreneurship, sisterhood, and podcasting, as we explore the question, how do we grow wholesome sisterhoods and creative futures? We hope that you enjoy this little window into our world and that it brings you into deeper connection with all that we are. Welcome to All That We Are with me, your host, Amisha Ghadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between activism, the sacred, creativity, and regeneration, the spaces where our inner and outer worlds dance. From healing trauma to nature connection, to new technologies to ancient wisdom, it's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a more beautiful future. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to listen, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing and envisioning, we create the futures of our wildest dreams. And we begin to embody all that we are becoming, and all that is possible. I am delighted to be here with both you, Annegret, and you, Mary, who are the incredible women that make this show possible. I'm going to ask both of you, what are the futures of your wildest dreams?
The future of my wildest dreams is quite simple, actually. It's a future where I hope all of us have spaces where we can simply be. By that, I mean be ourselves in our wholeness, in the way that we imagine ourselves at our best. That's the future of my wildest dreams.
Thank you. And Mary, what's alive for you with that question today?
For me, this one always goes back to something that I actually learned from my daughter's school when she first started school in kindergarten. They have values for the whole school, and it's to be kind to themselves, be kind to their community, and to be kind to this land. And through that, they talk a lot about compassion. And so, if people can just have that compassion and lead with that kindness, I think so many things can change and so many things can evolve into a beautiful place versus that self centered, what's in it for me attitude. So, the kindness and the compassion, I think, can really, really go a long way if everybody just starts with that.
Beautiful. I love the simplicity that we're sharing today after now nearly 200 episodes where they get so complicated. And now it's like, okay, just being and kindness.
Yeah, I don't think it doesn't need to be difficult or complicated sometimes.
But actually, within those two lays a lot of complexity, right? So that's the thing. I guess the space to leave people with. What does that actually mean when you sit with those? How do we get there? That's where the complexity lies. And I guess we don't have all the answers, right? That's why we're here, asking big questions.
Yeah, for me, what's alive with that question in this moment is actually all about health. The futures of my wildest dreams is where every human being is entitled to live well and to be healthy. And that's something that feels really actually hard to access right now with the issues that we have around our food and other aspects of modern living that are disconnecting us from our health, and the amount of different conditions that are getting more prominent. I'm also thinking about how unequal our society is and how access to health is such a privilege. With health, also bringing in emotional health and mental health and spiritual health, as well as physical health, and how those things all interrelate. And when I was walking earlier, yeah, that was really alive for me, that the next chapters of my life, I really want to be anchored in that sense of health, and how can we forge a different path forward that might be different to our personal ancestries or the dominant societal norm that we're in right now.
All the futures that the three of us are hoping for, they weave together really beautifully. They kind of complement each other in a really great way.
Here we are at this point where, Annegret, you have worked on around 100 episodes at this point. And also, you were a guest on one of the very first episodes and a contributor to the book that preceded all of this. And Mary, you have now edited 150 episodes at least at this point. I would love to know what motivates you to do this work and be part of this show. Like, what is it that you feel that you receive from all that we are?
I love all the guests that you bring on. They're so diverse and different from the people that I meet here every day, or even with the other podcasts that I work on. Those guests are very different from who you bring on. And so the topics and the questions that you bring are just so unique, intriguing, always gets me thinking. Or I start researching more about the guest or the topics that they talk about. And I just really love learning and growing from working on the show. Like sometimes I'll be editing and then I think, oh no, I haven't actually edited anything for a while because I've just been listening because I'm just so engrossed in the conversation. So it takes me a little longer to edit sometimes because I have to listen to it all over again. It's almost like listening to it twice.
I love that.
That last point is exactly what happens to me too. I have some episodes where I literally listen for 4 hours and it's like an hour and a half, but I stop and start, I stop and start, and I am really absorbed by the different points of view people are volunteering. It's quite an amazing experience how freely people are sharing their life experiences. And especially as most guests that are on board are really creating new ways of life and living. And so it's very powerful and constantly stirs my curiosity. I'm always like, who is this next person? This is so fascinating. And I think also what it has done for me, it's opened my mind and my heart to how many commonalities actually lie within all these ways of life and how differently we might express them depending on where we are situated in the world. And that is something that never gets boring for me. I'm fascinated by that.
Have there ever been any episodes that you've listened to and then you've been like, oh gosh, this one's awful? No need to name any names, but just curious.
No, I don't think I've ever had that experience, but maybe more of if it wasn't totally in tune with like just what I'm feeling in the moment. Not that it wasn't a good conversation. It was just more, okay, I just need to get this done. And so I wasn't paying like full attention to the content versus I'm listening for the editing stuff.
Yeah, not so much the episode, but I've had a couple of occasions where I had to walk out of the room, put my headphones down and go, I cannot deal with this. I need to come back to it. And so more of actually being internally challenged by some people's points of views. What's beautiful about listening to it as someone in the background editing, you can take that time and that moment to walk away and come back to it and like open your mind to it differently. So I've never ended on feeling some dissonance, which is also nice. But I've had moments, definitely. And it felt like I'm having the conversation with the person and I must just leave the room now. So that's great to be challenged in that way, right?
Yeah. And that's the difference between like the work that you do and the work that I do, because then I don't have to listen to the content. If it's something that disagrees with my viewpoint, I won't be listening to the words. I'll listen for sound, I'll listen for background stuff, I'll listen for other things, and then I'll just kind of skip the content stuff so it doesn't make me angry.
Okay, I'm enjoying this.
And I guess for me, it's very important to then find the nuggets of difference that we want to share with our listeners for quotes and for our write-up. So it is quite different.
And with those episodes, which I am imagining happen less often, have you then later felt like, oh, like I get what they're saying or I get their perspective?
I think when the episode goes on, then you're like, oh, okay, I can understand why they said that, or this kind of makes sense now. I still might not agree with it, but yeah, okay, I can see where that came from. So I can see that working out and me being less angry at the person.
Yes. It like I say, I've never ended on some sort of sense of dissonance. There's always some resolve to this feeling either within myself or because you managed to lead the conversation somewhere with your line of questions that opens up another layer. And that really helps to get a bit deeper into some of the points. And I love when that happens, because I can hear when you are also challenging people to think deeper and to reveal more. And that's very exciting.
I have had experiences on episodes that have also been incredibly challenging to host, where on a show that's really focused around deep listening, I haven't felt that that's what's happening. And that's been really, really challenging. I've also had experiences where podcast guests have been quite rude. And then I've been like, oh, okay, what do we do with that? And I guess what I've come to is that this isn't just a place of everyone that I find highly resonant, that we are exploring these times and that there's space for all of it. And it's nice to be challenged and to open up that space. And then, of course, when there are the episodes that are just highly resonant and really beautiful, that is, of course, a different kind of experience that feels really life affirming. But there's space for all of it, and there has to be space for all of it in these times.
I think it's a great representation of what the real world is, right? Like, this podcast isn't curated just for the positivity in the world and all of that stuff, right? Like, it's not surface, it's not fluffy. The people that we talk to on, even in your own lives on a day-to-day basis, there's always going to be some sort of a challenge, a sticking point, a viewpoint that might not totally coincide with what you think, but that's also the point, right? It's to open up your point of view and to see what someone else's opinion is on the other side of the world. And I think for me, that's the beautiful thing, because I am in Canada. A lot of my news is US centric. A lot of the people we hear about are usually just from the States. And so when you bring on all these people from all over the world and to hear their insights about what is going on for them on the ground is really, really eye opening. And I love hearing that stuff about it.
Yeah, and I think it's really great that it gives an opportunity for us to understand how we can hold the dualities of life at this time and to be a part of passing that on to our community. I think is a really, really important aspect of this work for me personally.
Powerful. Yeah. So as you know, I'm not like one of these big, like, this is going to change your life kinds of spiritual people. But I do want to know, has this changed your life? Are there episodes or insights or guests or the collective experience of all that we are that you feel has changed something for you?
It's constant. There isn't like a specific conversation. Well, there's actually one specific conversation, which is my favorite, which both of you know.
I don't know. Do you know, Mary?
No.
Turkis in Ghost Horse.
Hmm.
The reason why that episode, it wasn't so much that it changed something. It so deeply affirmed everything that I know in myself. That was so powerful that it's in my personal work really changed the way that I saw myself. And I love that. So for me, that's always going to be a favorite episode because of that. But I feel like everything else is almost like this slow process because we're part of something that is changing. It is a constantly changing conversation across this community. And so for me, I'm almost in a space where I just allow for that to move through me. And I don't think I'm going to know until maybe in 5 years' time the full impact of it, because it's like this constant process, like a little river going through me. It's a very interesting place. And I wouldn't want to miss it. That's definitely something I know.
Yeah, I really resonate with that too, because I don't know if there's one exact episode, right? But every time there is something going on in my life personally, it's somehow reflected back in an episode that I'm editing that you've just recorded. And it's like the one that's going to be published, that week. There's something that always ties into my personal life. And I'm like, oh, I could use that little nugget. Or, there was a guest a couple weeks ago, they mentioned the forest fires in BC, and I'm like, "That's where I live. Yes, we have the forest fires all the time now." And just be able to connect with that, even though it didn't change my life. It's like, "Oh, people see us. Yes, that is happening here. It's devastating." It's all of this stuff. Or when either my dad died or my mother-in-law died, there was a episode and talk about grief, and I was like, "Oh, what perfect timing." And it wasn't like the whole episode was about grief, but you guys had touched a bit on it. It just clicked in that moment that I really needed it.
And how about you, Misha? That's for you. What is it like for you?
Well, sometimes it's a lot. It's a lot to host and create a weekly show and bring in someone else's perspective so fully into like my world that week, because we do take so much care with each guest in each episode. Sometimes I'm like, it's really nice to have that space. And then recently, when we took 6 months off, I was like, hang on, where's my North Star? There's something so potent about being able to just sit in the seat of wisdom and to open up that space. And I really do believe that we all hold so much wisdom, that we all have access to it, and that we don't always ask or get asked. And for me, as somebody that is not so great with small talk, has always had so many big questions, the space that we've created here has been a real gift to get to ask those questions. And I feel like every episode, it's a transmission. It's not just words. It's definitely not content. It's an experience. It's an energetic experience, and it shifts something. And I feel with every episode, something happens in my cellular body, something happens in my awareness. Dots get connected on the global story that we're in. That's a really, really powerful thing that I'm really, really grateful for. And I find working with the two of you as well just makes it all possible, and it makes it fun, and it makes it feel supported in such a wonderful way. And there's no way that I'd be doing this like on my own. I feel like having both of you and all of the care and the love that you bring and the structure like really, really helps to make sure that we keep creating something, and that we keep creating something that's beautiful and that's powerful and that's evolving. And it can be really interesting when I listen back to episodes, which I do less now than I did at the beginning, because I think that's part of the journey of a podcaster. Like, I've never called myself a podcaster before. I just did.
Here we are.
With a capital P podcaster.
Here we are. I remember at the beginning having much more of a notion of like control, or like what I felt like it needed to be, or caring about how I was perceived, all of these kinds of things. And I would listen to each episode and be very like involved in the editing. And now I'm not at all involved in the editing and don't often listen to them back. But then sometimes when I'm driving around, I'll put one on and listen to it in its completion. Or I'll listen to an episode from 5 years ago, because we're on year 6 now. It's so powerful. And I don't feel like it's me, because we evolve every day. We change every day. And so I find that really extraordinary to go back and listen to older episodes and to hear the wisdom and to be moved and transformed by something all over again.
Yeah, that's one thing that I don't do too often.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm like, I've listened to it for like hours and hours and hours while editing. I'm good. That's what I needed in that time.
Same. I think I'm fulfilled after I've done the work. But it's a different thing because you're in conversation. And so what you hear when you listen to it afterwards is another layer.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time you re-listen to something, you hear something else that you didn't hear in that way that the first time, which I know happens for both of you in the process of tending to an episode when we publish them. I would love to hear more about what both of you are working on outside of All That We Are, and also how All That We Are interrelates or informs, expands what you're offering in other aspects of your life. I'm really grateful that we have this team of female creators and that both of you are entrepreneurs and creators and artists in the other worlds in which you work. Mary, can you tell us more about your business and what your offerings are?
Yeah, so I have a podcast production company. A lot of it is editing shows like yours, but also for those who are thinking about launching a podcast, I help launch a podcast as well and take people through that whole initial spark of an idea of wanting to get behind the microphone to putting all the pieces into place. Because as we were just saying, there's just so many moving parts that one person can't do it all by themselves. So kind of like that right hand woman to get all those podcast pieces together so that there is a show to be published out there. So that's the business side of things. I come from a radio background, and so the part of that, I bring a lot of that radio stuff into the work as well. So for those who are also like uncomfortable behind the microphone, because yes, you may want to start a podcast, but sometimes, like you were saying, you listen back and then you're like, oh, I can't believe I said that, or that's how I sound, and things like that. So I do a lot of vocal coaching and getting people comfortable behind a microphone because it is weird to have a microphone right next to you, like centimeters away from your face, and that can be a little uncomfortable. And so there's a lot of vocal coaching that goes around all of that as well. So, but personally, I take a lot of the aspects and the things that I learn from All That We Are into my personal life as well, just because a lot of the values and the things that you talk about align with me personally and what I, already like to do in terms of environmentalism and taking care of people in my community and family. And I have a young daughter who just turned 8. And so there's a lot of learnings from there that I take into being a parent and being a partner in this family dynamic that we have here. And how do we break the cycles too of how we were growing up and how each of our own as a parent, how do we bring that to the table and do it differently for our daughter now? And all of that sort of stuff, like just little nuggets always play into something that I do. There might even be a circumstance where like I'm angry with my daughter about, something, and I'm like, okay, I just need to take a breath. I can hear like sometimes Amisha, you're like, okay, let's just take a breath. Like before the podcast, when all the listeners, you don't hear the before stuff. And Amisha always brings such calmness and centering before the podcast begins. And that's all the stuff like we edit out. But I can hear Amisha's just like, okay, let's just take a breath. Let's just center. And then I can say what I need to say to my daughter instead of just like reacting and being angry and in the moment. So it's even something like that where I'm like, this is what I need. This is good. Thank you, Amisha.
I love that you've got such a tangible example. For me, it's very life affirming. And I'm a great believer that all the things that touch me in my life flow into my work. So I think this is like a given that the conversations and everything that I take from it partially helps me ground the perceptions that I already hold, but it also helps me open myself up to new ways. And I guess that's a big part and always has been a big part of my work, to inspire new ways of seeing the world and new ways of thinking and doing things. And so I feel like it's a beautiful complement somehow, everything that I do. And I don't see it as a separate thing. It's part of the work that I do. That's how I see it, because the work that I create, I guess, very well aligned, just in a different medium. So I guess what it has done for me, and that's been an ongoing process, it has really clarified where my place is in the world. And I love that. It's very powerful for me. And it keeps affirming it as I go along, creating my own art practice, which has been a long time coming. I would say it's really an ecological art practice. It's bringing all the values and things that I used to practice in fashion into a much more direct conversation with myself, but also with audiences, particularly bringing myself into a space where I am in a much more direct conversation with our ecologies. I feel that some of the conversations we've been sharing on this podcast have really also given me the courage to fully step into that work. I feel like I've circled around it for a very long time. And so it's quite a beautiful thing. Also, to have a community of women to work with, I think is something that I deeply value. That is something quite exceptional and something that has definitely grown my heart, restored a lot of faith that we can build wholesome communities, especially as I started working on this podcast during the pandemic. And so obviously we had all sorts of challenges throughout that time. And I feel that we've, managed to create something together that's quite behind the scenes, a very powerful flow of work for me. And so, like you said earlier, Amisha, it's sort of a grounding experience because it also has a nice rhythm to it. It's a regular occurrence that grounds. And I haven't been as clear as Mary. Mary, you're very clear. You've got your business. I've got to say, my business changed. So maybe that's why I'm not so clear about that. But really, my art practice is at the forefront of what I do now as an ecological art practice. And my work as a cultural futurist goes hand in hand. And I feel that this podcast is part of the cultural futurist work, really bringing alive new viewpoints. I also work as a visioning coach, which is something that has been with me as long as you've been doing this podcast, Amisha. I did my first Lead the Way session, maybe even the year before you launched the podcast. So it's kind of a nice thing. And those visioning sessions are really about addressing the crisis of our imagination. They are something that support people in creating their future visions for their own personal lives and grounding them into their values. These are quite hands-on, practical sessions, but they're also a space where people get really to freely dream themselves into who they hope to become with the potential that exists around them. This is work that I deeply love. All of these things, to me, they come together quite beautifully. The podcast, that visioning work, and my ecological art practice, none of them are divided. So it's a good experience to be here.
I love that you highlighted what it's like to work as an all-female team. And that was something that was really, really important for me because the statistics actually around podcasts, especially when I started, was that it was a very, very male thing.
It still is.
It still is. Do you know some stats?
I don't know the numbers right off the bat, but it's like the female hosted podcasts are like inching up 1 or 2 percentage points only. Yeah, so it's still a very a white male dominated industry. But that's what I love about this too. Is like I said earlier, I had come from a radio background and it's all egos, male driven. And so when I started the business and I met you online, Amisha, and you wanted to make it a female team, I'm like, oh, that would be so nice. Just that idea of this can happen versus just being told what to do all the time because I'm the guy, I'm the one that's in charge. That energy that you brought on just changed everything. And it made even like my shoulders like relax. I'm like, oh, this is the way that it can be done and still be done successfully, even though it's not the usual way that it's always been done before. Because why do we have to do things the way that it's always been done? Why can't we change things up? And so it was just such a freeing experience to be able to go with your vision of, okay, all female team. I love this. Let's do it.
Yeah, and part of the reason for that was not just for the experience of working with other women and being able to support each other in that way, but it was really to offer to the world a different lens of listening and to be hosting as a woman in this hosting style that I created for myself. I didn't follow the templates of how it quote unquote should be done. I just was like, I'm going to do it this way. And it wasn't even like I made a plan to do it this way. I just did it in the way that felt the most aligned to create the kind of experience that I wanted to create. And then to have the episodes edited by women. We weren't edited by women at the very beginning, sound edited. And I felt like it was really beautiful when we were, because we don't realize how much of the media that we're exposed to in the world, not just podcasts, like comes through a particular lens. And also not to cause any upset around gender. And for those that don't identify as women or men or that are beyond that construct, one of the things that I have understood from working a lot with women, because it's a lot of women that I've worked with on my retreats and my mentoring, is that there's a different subtlety and there's a different framing and there's a completely different worldview that can come out. It's actually really radical in a way that we don't even understand because we don't realize how edited by the dominant perspective everything else is that we're exposed to. This has allowed us to bloom into who we all really are and to offer from that place. And at the beginning, I also was really aware that when it comes to guests, that it's often the men that we've heard of. It's the men that's books have done the best, the names that are more authoritative in certain industries. And so I made this decision that we'd alternate between man, woman. Then it evolved and I decided to break that rule and just go with the flow of who was coming through as like the next guests. And then I realized that we've ended up having way more women than men on the show in recent series. And somebody was like, said to me the other day, oh yeah, like your show's all about like female empowerment and leadership. And I was like, oh, is it? Okay. That's not something that I had consciously chosen, but I've heard so many men say, well, we want to have more women on our show, but like, where are the good ones? You know, like, where are the ones? I don't know any great female facilitators or teachers or writers or authors or whatever. And I'm like, there's so many. I am so blessed to meet so many incredible, inspiring women. What I love is how women that are entrepreneurs, that are creators in their work, are also often caretakers and holding all kinds of other complex responsibilities as parents, step parents, carers of elderly wives, all of this, and have this more holistic way of being in the world. And I also want to share how, Annegret, when you came onto the show, you also brought this incredibly beautiful creative eye. And our Instagram is just so dreamy and inspiring. You find all of these incredible works of art that help to bring our stories to life, and that it's in such a kind of subtle way. It's art. It's not like soundbite, like here's this person's face, like shiny and like telling you something. It's like, here's a really powerful, beautiful piece of art, and there's a voice sharing something. That freedom to say we're going to do it differently, which is probably why I never thought of myself as a podcaster till I accidentally realized I was one today. Because for me, it's never been about that. It's actually about creating art, creating experiences, creating connection, giving space for deep listening, creating community. And I feel like that's something that the three of us do really beautifully together.
Yeah, I think we've got this rhythm. Like it's almost like a second language. You know, we all trust each other in our roles and to do our parts. And it's something that I look forward to every week, right? It's like that, this is what I get to do this week. I get to hang out with the two of you, even though we are working during our own times and own time zones. But it is like we are working all together at the same time.
Yeah, and that trust that lives there, especially as we're working across different time zones. We are on literally all three of us, opposite ends of the world. I think that is the life affirming part, is that trust that I just really love.
And we have 3 different cultural perspectives, and we all have a bit of East and West, North and South in us, which is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, and it's great because we also ask each other honest questions about some perspectives in the conversations that are shared with the community. And we're not afraid to share those with each other. I think that's also very beautiful.
Annegret, can you share more around the process of the visual journey that you create for us with the episodes and the imagery?
It's quite an intuitive part of the work for me. I listen to the episodes and I look at the core quotes that we want to share, and I let those inspire each image or artwork that I choose. Truthfully, sometimes it can take me hours to find the right one, but I'll persevere. I will be there looking for it. I feel it has to have some kind of thread to the essence of the episode and to the core of what we hope to share. Yeah, that's part of the process, and a lot of that work happens on Instagram. So I'm not doom scrolling. I'm scrolling for beauty.
Thank you for tuning in. If you are enjoying this episode, do join our membership. For a small contribution, you can be part of our community, where we deepen the conversation and offer spaces of learning and embodiment. As a member, you are a patron supporting the making of this show, keeping the episodes full length, free and accessible for all. And you receive a number of benefits, such as monthly soul space, going deeper sessions, access to our library of workshops, and discounts on all our online and in-person experiences. Our membership is what makes us able to make this show and stay advertising free in a world that is always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. Head to allthatweare.org/membership to find out more and join today. Annegret, you mentioned courage. I'm curious about this for both of you as female creators, artists, entrepreneurs that are doing your own thing. You're bringing your vision into the world. You've both created lives for yourselves that are outside of the dominant flow. You've both found ways to do what it is that you love and you believe in this world. You've both overcome immense challenges in your personal and entrepreneurial lives in order to do this. I wonder what's alive for you around how you've done that and how you keep anchoring into courage along the path. You know, Annegret, you and I, we've now been in each other's world for 15 years. And so we've definitely seen a lot of the highs and lows of the journey of what it is to believe in your vision and put it into the world. And Mary, you and I have gone deep because we've also done sessions outside of the podcast with the intuitive energy work. So we've gone much deeper together into some of the other aspects of your life and how that has led you to starting your own business and bringing the work into the world in a way that allows you to be a really present mom as well. And so I would love to hear for, everyone listening that either wants to be doing something different to what they're doing or is doing something, but they're finding it really hard. What is it that you want to share about that journey for you and the anchoring into courage and the permission to be who you are in the world and to offer that out?
I'm going to go with trust. Trust yourself and to trust that what you believe in and what you value is worthy. And so it will come to fruition and will be successful for you, however you see success to be. I was very, very privileged to be able to start my business from having a radio career and the privilege as well of being downsized from my career. At the time, you're always like, "Oh my gosh, I've lost my job. What are we gonna do with my life?" You cry, you grieve, you get angry.
I love how much you're bringing anger into this episode.
Anger! Oh! And it's something that you and I worked on, Amisha, is you let me understand that anger isn't a bad thing. It's just my passion coming through. So being able to then know that this situation that happened to me where I lose my job, I also was recovering from a traumatic brain injury where I was run over by a car as a cyclist. And then having that idea of, can I even do this? Let's just try it. And so when I lost my job, I was lucky enough to have a severance. And so that was kind of like the trust part where, okay, I have this. Let's use this little bank of money that I've gotten to try and make this business work. When the money runs dry, then we'll see, maybe then I'll reevaluate if this is actually working for me or not. But we didn't really think of it that way at that time. It was just more about, okay, how can I continue to do something that I love? So it was working with audio, working with people's voices, the audio editing aspect of it. Like, how do I continue to do that? Which I had been doing for 20 years at that point, because audio was just always ingrained into me as like a teenager, and it was something I always wanted to work with. And so, yeah, how do I continue to do that and still pay for the way we live, food, living expenses, and all that stuff? So it was just the trust in, okay, let's do this as an experiment, and if it works out, it works out. And it wasn't like I even got to a point where, okay, well, I need to sit down and reevaluate everything. It was just going with the flow and going with people that I felt like I would have a good alignment working with, versus taking any client that would come along, but really sitting with it and saying, okay, does this person align with my personal values? Does this show align with my values? If it does, then I'm going to continue to love to work on this. Because when I worked in radio, I was always just given the work, and there was only so many car dealership commercials I wanted to produce. They all sound the same. It's some man with a low voice screaming at you because it's 0% financing. You can buy a car now. And, it's just not exciting. So after 15 to 20 years of producing things like that, you're like, I want to work on something that has meaning to me. That was the trust that I can do this. Let's try and make it happen, because what's my alternative? Sitting at an office desk job, working 9 to 5, which is a great job. I know lots of people who do that, but it's just not for me. And I knew that if I started with that route and I didn't try this, then I would regret it.
I'm so glad that you did.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Mary, for taking that leap. It's amazing.
Yeah, so inspiring.
My life path has been quite a windy road since I was a child. So I guess I'm kind of used to, let's say, inventing the path for myself and trying to envision the path before I can walk it, because I didn't have those possibilities around me where I grew up and in East Germany. And so I guess this sort of imagining it before walking it became a very big part of who I am. And at some point after the wall came down, I was very clear that this was my second chance to live life in a different way. I can only describe it as quite a physical embodied power that drove me. and some deep, deep knowing that certain things I needed to do. And so I think maybe the decision started when I wanted to go to university. And I was like, what to study though? I just didn't know. And then the decision was really between something sensible like psychology. I could become a psychologist, or I study art and I could go and explore and experiment what that actually means. I decided that coming from a family where there are a lot of social workers and a lot of theologists and a lot of people who take care of community and nurture community and take care of each other in some shape or form, maybe I could try this other thing. And so I did. And it was quite a free fall, to be truthful, because it wasn't the thing to do in my family. Yeah, I mean, it took me on a long path of also setting up my own business, a sustainable fashion business, which I actually started in 2003. Again, this was a thing I did out of quite a deep knowing within myself that this was something I believed in, something that I needed to bring alive. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no fashion background, nothing. You know, it's like I was also learning as I was going. And I guess that was always part of also where I grew up. That's what you did. You just had to kind of find and put the pieces together somehow and make it work with what you had around you. It somehow worked. And then I guess it came together with a certain zeitgeist of our collective communities that I managed to tap into. So as I was going along, I think the most powerful thing in that process was to find like-minded community, which you, Amisha, are part of. Then keeping on walking quite a hard path in that space. It was at the same time so deeply inspiring because we kept finding like-minded spirits all over the world. I think it opened up a whole new era of how we are living and thinking and doing things now that sort of kept the flame alive of running a business for me. And I naturally really came to a point where it was very clear the business was kind of almost like a side tour. It had become its own living, breathing thing that I was part of rather than it being my business, if that makes sense. And so I got to a place where I was like, well, actually, I don't feel I'm that useful in here now because this is multiplying in its own right. And I actually feel my voice might be more useful in a different way. And so then a whole new journey started for me to think about what would that look like. And that was around 2015. I started to think about what does it look like if I'm not a sustainable fashion designer anymore? What are the values that I'm living and breathing in this thing? And so that's sort of the values of everything have always been my pathfinder. And I guess so the work that I'm doing now started to emerge and I started to really give it space. I started to really deeply, deeply listen to myself as well, because I was like, if I am in this lifetime fortunate enough to be able to unfold this in an even clearer way that is really deeply fulfilling for me at the same time, I must really take my time and honor all the things that didn't work as much as all the things that I hope to live and breathe in this lifetime. So yeah, and I can only say now, again, I am in a place where I am truly bringing alive what I've been hoping for. And it is a very powerful experience this time around because I can enjoy it and I can be in it fully, wholeheartedly. I think the most important part is I can have joy in it and I have community that connects with it and that I connect with, that I can lean into, that I feel has a certain sense of understanding of how tough and challenging it is to put oneself out there. But at the same time, as tough as all of that is, I don't know any other way. like this is what I do, how I live and breathe and move. So I guess for me, the most important part to sort of, I mean, we started at the word of courage. I guess that's the leap, to have the courage to take the leap. And sometimes we have to do that by ourselves, and that's very tough. But anyone who's attempting to step more fully into, I guess, their truth and their true expression, in whatever shape or form that takes, I would encourage them to try and find like-minded people, or even podcasts like this, where we can recognize ourselves and maybe recognize other humans all over the world are in a similar place.
I love that. When you said that tulips, well, you didn't actually mention tulips, but when you said that you felt that your fashion brand, it was kind of, the sustainable fashion work was its own thing. And it made me laugh because I was like, I feel like that about all that we are now. And then you were like, so then I left. And then I was like, oh, it would be quite hard if I left at this point. But also, I have to say that I find that in that journey of putting yourself out there and being a creator and sharing your voice and your truth and opening yourself up in a way that is vulnerable, and especially because I also do one-to-one work, so there's huge amounts of projection and all kinds of things, and having amazing people that can ride out the highs and the lows in a non-judgmental way is so powerful. And I am so grateful, like really from the depths of my heart, for both of you. There are so many points actually that if you hadn't been there, Annegret, like we were in London together for a big period of time, and you always were able to see my vision, and you always were able to remind me that it was important at times when I was really faced with big challenges and ancestral challenges and cultural challenges and business challenges, and had walked down the wrong path for a while. I always felt that you were there offering support and reflecting truth and beauty and goodness back to me, and reminding me how important my vision was and how I needed to lead the way with it, which is what you do. And you offer space for people to vision and to lead the way. And you did that in our friendship for many years. And that was so powerful when I remember how real the fear and the struggle was for me, especially in my 20s, that was a real thing. And there are moments, especially in the last couple of years, as I know everyone knows, I have been challenged. And somebody came up to me at a festival I was teaching recently and said, oh, like, sounds like you're still like going through difficult things. And I'm like, yeah, like, I don't necessarily think that there's like a magic pill to that, like that suddenly I'm going to create my own amazing reality, because we do live within the systems of oppression, the ancestry, the cultural conditioning that we live in. I have been facing a lot of illness, and the illness of my parents and other things, and it's been exhausting and it's been hard. And there was a moment, Mary, when you said to me, I feel like I was apologizing for just not being my best, not showing up as my best. And you said something like, everybody needs like something in their life that's constant, and everybody needs that place of support. And maybe you didn't say exactly this bit, but I'm kind of adding in like people that really see you and that really want the best for you, and that can really help to anchor that. When you wrote that to me, I cried. I was just like, oh, I'm so lucky to be working with people that understand life, that understand what it is to be all that we are, and that understand that the depth and the beauty that I'm able to offer through the show also comes through and from things that I am challenged with and that I've had to be challenged with in my life. And I just felt so held. And I feel like there are times in the last couple of years where I might have stopped the show if it wasn't anchored so beautifully by the two of you. And I felt like, okay, no, we're doing this together and I can do my bit and there's space and we're all doing it. And that, for me, that power of sisterhood there, like, is really something really special. And it extends to the community. We're all in this together. And creativity, courage, community, that those are three of the words that I want to be part of all that we are. And that's for me what the offering of the membership space is about. It's that space where we are able to nurture each other's creativity and courage and create that community around what it means to be people that want to live in beauty in this complex world at this complex time, and that really want to live all that we are.
Yes, and to be people that are courageous to ask big and difficult questions that can land, and that can really open dialogue.
Yeah. What you do really beautifully is you ask the question that everybody else is thinking. Like I was thinking of, oh, I wonder, da 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 da. And then your next question is, that's the question, like it feels like even though as a listener, you listen after the fact it was done, it does feel like you are there, like in a circle with us. And we're like, whispering to you, hey, we want to know about this. And you just intuitively know and feel our energy and project it. And like it's just this magical little circle space that happens in between our ears when we listen.
Yeah, it is like that. It is like that. Because when I started this, with no one having given me permission to do it, no one having said, here's the money, go make this show, the show's about this, the show's done like this, I freed myself from all of the rules about how you're supposed to do something. I wanted to create an alive, intuitive space. And that meant that I had to let go of any ideas of what sounds intelligent or what you're supposed to ask, and to really learn how to listen deeply into that field. And I bring you all with me into that field because I'm creating this for us, for this community, for everyone that listens to this show. I don't know how I hear the questions exactly, but I do. And it's because they're not the questions that you're supposed to ask that they end up being the questions that actually everyone wants to ask.
There's like no time and space in this one because it's the future that we're listening to it, but somehow you got it in that moment when you're recording it like weeks before. It's magic. I love it.
You touched on sisterhood, that we've created this sisterhood, which is so deeply valuable, just such a safe space. And I know that's such a cliche word, safe space, but it truly is. And I'm so deeply thankful for that I'm getting to experience that in my lifetime. And I wanted you both to know that.
I was just had the word safe space in my sphere, as you were saying before you started saying that. And I have worked and collaborated and lived in many unsafe spaces, even when there has been sisterhood. And for me, what makes this space so magnificent is that there's no judgment, there's full honoring and respect of each other, there's trust. And so if something doesn't happen at the moment it's supposed to happen, there's no jumping on each other's throats of why haven't you done that? Or this means that, or it's we just know. And even through that, we can then create this flow that is based in that understanding. And with that, we choose our breaks and we choose when to come back on air. And it always kind of just flows and it feels right for everyone. That's been a huge learning and unlearning process for me, to know that with the two of you, if I do something quote unquote wrong, you're not going to make a huge thing out of it and persecute me, which I have experienced a lot in my life and in sisterhood. That I know that if I do something wrong or I'm not able to show up fully for something, or something else is happening in my life at that moment, that there's just full understanding and encouragement that the space is there. There's always that space to come back fully as we are. It's a really deeply healing experience. And so if nobody ever listens to the show or joins the membership, then I know that that's something that has been so powerful in this journey that, like you said, I will treasure for lifetimes, and that it has healed so much in the past, in the future, in this non-linear way. And that as women, because we have been through so much in our history, in our herstory, there's been so much persecution and so much turning against each other, and also just having to hold and be so much, that this way of really deeply trusting, honoring, believing in each other, and giving each other space for all that we are and everything else that might be coming up in our lives and how it feeds in, and trusting that process, it's so deeply healing. And it really is part of the medicine of these times.
We know that we have each other's backs. This one example popped into my head where what happens behind the scenes is that we also have a WhatsApp group chat amongst the three of us. But what happens because of the time zone difference, the two of you usually have like a big running list of something happening. And I wake up in the morning with a long list of
Sorry.
messages.
Sorry.
That's all right. No, it's fine. It's all good because I know that's what happens, right? And there was one time where maybe I just wasn't feeling that great when I woke up, or I was busy with my daughter, the morning routine, all of this stuff. And I had seen the messages come in. I looked at them, but I didn't respond to any of them. And then I got busy with the first few hours of my working hours doing other stuff that I just never responded. And Amisha, you just checked in with a, "Hey, Mary, how are you doing? We haven't heard from you. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." And just that one simple check in message was, oh, right. Yes, I haven't been myself. I'm doing okay, though. Like, thanks for thinking of me. Even just you thinking of me was like, really relieving because, had that stressful morning or what have you. So, also to say, I do look forward to your little messages in the morning when I wake up. What did the two of you chat about?
Annegret also wakes up way earlier than me, both due to time zone and her life choices. So I also wake up a lot to Annegret's
What happens with me? I wake up at like 5:36, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I mustn't forget this. And then I just get going, and I just leave it there until someone wakes up. And I'll have probably gone and done 10,000 other things in the meantime. And then it's like, oh, it's this time now. Okay, cool. We can do this. It's part of the beauty of being in different time zones and different life zones, I guess. It's like,
yeah, there's been a few occasions too where had other things during the week, so I'd be working really late on my Wednesday night.
Oh, and I'm ready.
And by a certain late night hour, I'd be like, "Oh no, Annegret's waking up any moment now, and it's Thursday morning her time. We need to publish this." So the quick WhatsApp message, "I'm still working on it, but I'm almost done."
I love that.
There's also been moments where it's been like 2, 3 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, I need to get the intro to Mary because it's going to be the end of her day. And especially when I'm in different time zones.
Yes, I get really shocked when you message me at 3 or 4 p.m. my time, and I'm like, "What time is it for you over there? Where are you?"
What is this lady doing?
Yes.
A lot of love goes into this work. And it's actually really amazing because I find sometimes with remote working, it can be quite transactional because we don't get to be in the same space, and we don't do the hugs and the kind of the making a cup of tea for each other and the "oh, how was your weekend" kind of thing. But there's such a a knowing of like the care and respect. And then every now and then we do these like team voice note check-ins where it's like, hey, what's happening in your life? And we share a little bit more, and we sometimes have monthly team meetings. But they haven't happened so much. We've had 2, I think.
Sometimes.
I like
yes.
sometimes.
They were great. But for me, it's really testament to how much we use our intuition actually with the work and with each other, how much we can tune into the field of us as a team and all that we are as its own entity, its own field, and all of the community, and create things that so very rarely need changing. It's really something.
I do wonder if it's more a question to our listeners, really, because, you know, we are quietly doing this work and we're sharing so much, and Amisha especially, everything that we've just spoken about. I hope that we also get to hear how it all resonates with our listeners. If this experience that we are having together as our little podcast creation community sisterhood, if this is something that's resonating through these episodes, would really interest me. The care and the love and the courage and the trust and the intuition that we carry and nourish in each other, is this something that also spills out into our community? I'd love to know that.
I would love to hear more from our community in general. I would love to hear reflections, and I feel that sometimes our episodes, because they're not soundbitey and they're not like 10 ways to like be awesome or whatever, like they're because you're already awesome. But because our episodes are deep and they move you, like they move all of us. And also a lot of you are not people that are like always online. And so you're not like always commenting on posts and things like that. And we respect that. We respect your time out with the trees and the streams and with your families and all of that. But we would love to hear more from you, whether that's through reviews, whether that's through sending us emails, whether that's through sharing more in our community group for all of the members. I would love to hear a little bit more about each episode and what they mean to you, so that we can fully be in this space together. And so there's definitely an invitation there.
Yeah, I love that invitation.
You could write it on paper and post it to us if you don't want to be on your screens. That's also okay.
Yes. I love pen and paper. I love writing notes. So that would be neat to see.
Yes.
We do catch a few of the intuitive messages that you send to us, but they're not as tangible as when we receive it in the written word. Okay, ladies, what is the call to action that you want to leave our friends listening with?
I would like to start with something that is very close to my heart. It is a final piece of work that I'm going to open up to generally the wider collective, that is going to be happening very soon, where I will be inviting people to join me on a daydream experiment and to create a collective ecological imagination practice. I can't share a link to this yet, but maybe people can join my Instagram to then be aware of when this will happen. But ultimately, we're going to go and daydream in a wildflower meadow, which is my absolute dream. And I hope some of you will be able to join me to do that. Maybe not physically, but in the digital world. So keep your eyes peeled for that, because it will definitely be something very soothing and beautiful to end the year with. And the inner call to action, I set the intention for this episode earlier by saying I would like it to have joy. And I hope that wherever you find yourselves at this moment, that you can find a way to tap into your joy, even if that is difficult because of how you might be feeling or the circumstances you find yourself in. But I hope that you can create a little spot and a little moment of joy for yourself to carry you forward into your next steps.
Thank you, Annegret. And we will definitely share the information about your dreaming experience when it's ready.
To touch on Annegret's joy, I was resonating back on what I said at the very beginning about compassion and kindness, and with my daughter. And there was one episode that I worked on early on that really solidified my way of parenting. And it was one of the parenting episodes with, was it Roma
Norris?
Roma, yeah. Where I didn't want to be a parent for the longest time. I always thought I was going to be a no child person. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that, I was brought up in a traditional Chinese household and, was told that you're going to grow up, get married, have kids, be a dutiful wife, have a husband, like all of that traditional stuff. And I was like, no, why? Like, why? Just because I'm told to, I don't want to do it. And so I never wanted to fall into that role. When my long-term partner and I, we were still to this day is still not married because I'm like, I don't want to get married. I don't want to be traditional and always rebelling about all of that. But when we both decided, okay, we will have a child, we want to grow a family, we always decided that to do this, it would be a lifelong experiment, essentially, because we don't know how it's going to turn out. But we don't want to do things just because we told, much like the podcast, not because we're told we should do certain things. Let's just do things based on how we feel, what we want to share into the world. And so going back to Annegret and your joy, I love how now that I'm a parent, I can also be a kid again. It's about finding all that little pieces of joy in being a parent, where it's not about a hierarchy, but it is creating that space where we can have joy in our life and to make things fun. Doing dishes can be fun. Doing your regular chores can be joyful. And I just love being able to be a kid again because I never really wanted to grow up and be an adult in the first place. So, yeah, just taking what we learn on this podcast and realizing that it can really integrate into your life and bring a lot of joy into it.
I love that. Somebody said to me just a couple of days ago, the thing that I really like about you, I just met this person, was like, you're very strong, but you're like a kid. And I was like, I have worked very hard for that.
I love that. Yes.
Yes.
My call to action is really to support all that we are, to activate within this space. And it's been a journey, and we pour a lot of love and care into creating this. And I know that there are so many things that are asking for your time and your money or your attention, and everyone's out there creating free content. But we are creating beautiful experiences. I would love for those of you that listen to really support us, to support this sisterhood. And you have now met these two exquisite women. We say on each episode that, and in our newsletters, that this podcast is made by this all-female team and it's made with so much love. Know that if you join the membership, if you become more active in that space, that's also creating livelihoods for us, for our families, for our lives, and allows us to pour even more into this. Well, as you heard, like Annegret doesn't time how long she spends looking for images. She will spend time looking for the right one, and the invoice is always the same. But we are three people that give a lot and that care a lot and that really believe in beauty and preciousness. And so in our 6th year, it is meaningful that if you receive a lot from this show, And not to take it for granted that we will just always do it, because who knows, but to really show us that this means something to you by joining our membership, supporting the show, showing up into those spaces, telling us how episodes move you. I donate to Choose Love from the membership in proportion to how much we receive, which I think is just an incredible charity organization that's working to raise awareness and support for refugees, which really to me is like one of the most important things of this time. And so come and create with us, come and be in our community of courage. And it means something for us that there is value that is understood in what we're doing. And so at this point really means a lot. And so if you have been meaning to join, if you have been imagining that everyone else has joined so you don't have to, if you do benefit a lot, and if you want to also support these other amazing women in what they're doing, then come and join our circle of community and courage, and that holding space for each other for all that we are. Annegret and Mary, thank you so much for coming and sharing your time. Can you both share your websites and how you would like our community to connect deeper with you, aside from in our membership community space?
I think the best way to connect with me is via my Instagram, which is my full name, Annegret.Affolderbach. And the other place where you can read a bit more and see a bit more about my work is my website, annegretaffolderbach.com. And we'll put that into the notes.
The show notes are amazing for this podcast.
Yes.
If you have never actually gone to the website and like clicked on an episode, you will find that we really do put links to everything that's mentioned. We spend a lot of time and love on that bit because we want you to have all these amazing resources. Mary.
Instagram for me as well, under my business name, Organized Sound Productions.
With a Z.
I was going to say with a Z. That's right. If you want to hear more of me, I have my own podcast as well. It's called The Podcaster's Guide to a Visible Voice. It's a podcast on podcasting.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this episode and for all that you do, all that you are, and all that we can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was fun.
Thank you for listening. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it has sparked some inspiration and creativity in you. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on allthatweare.org. We give space to our guests to share their perspective without debating it or fact-checking, as this approach allows for deep, unedited conversations from the heart. We trust your discernment and wisdom to take what is useful and challenge what isn't in your own understanding. We offer spaces for discussion and integration in our membership community, which we would love for you to join. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible by you, our beautiful community. If you loved this and would like to connect more deeply with us, please join our membership. You choose what you contribute based on our sliding scale, and you become a patron whose support makes this podcast happen, as well as receiving access to a library of many resources and invitations to nourishing events. Please also hit subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen so others can find us. This podcast is made by an all-female global team. Me, Amisha Ghadiali, producer and host, Annegret Affolderbach, who crafts the words that accompany each episode, and Mary Chan, who edits the sound so skillfully. All That We Are celebrates all that we are already and the untapped potential that lives inside us. It invites the full power of the more than human world, nature, the unseen, our ancestors and our future generations. It reminds us that we never exist in silo, through borders, timelines, or polarity, that in each and every moment, all that we are is here.